All right, it is 4:30, so we're going to get started. Welcome everyone who's here at Central States and everyone joining us online. Welcome to the NNP Symposium. This is our last presentation of the day, so thank you for sticking with us throughout it. As you probably have heard by now, we are sponsored by EPNUS, the Eric P. Newman Numismatic Education Society. This is the second year we've been at Central States, and it's great to be back for another hybrid event. So for this presentation, we are joined by Elizabeth Coggan and the Women of Numismatics organization. Elizabeth Coggan has been in the coin industry since 1983 and a price contributor to the Red Book since 1999. She was mentored by Q. David Bowers while working for Bowers and Morena Galleries and was a senior numismatist with JJT Party. She now owns her own business, Elizabeth Coggan Numismatics. So we're going to be hearing about Lady Liberty, real or ideal. And this one is going to be a little bit different. We have some audience participation. So if you are on Zoom, we're going to be looking at some coins and there'll be a quick poll before we answer the question. So when that comes up, the coin will be held up in front of the camera. So if you can do anything on your screen that you can to make that window bigger, I recommend it. We'll show the coin and then a poll will pop up on your screen with the options real or ideal. You'll click your answer and then we'll share the results from the Zoom poll here in the room as well. So this is the first time we've used this, so bear with us, but hopefully it all goes smoothly. So that's it for me. I'll let you take it away.
Thank you. Well, it's good to be here today. Thank you all for coming. When I first gave this talk, I was at a Houston coin club show, and I wanted to make it interactive so that people in the audience could actually see the coins in hand that we're talking about and not just see pictures of them. Some of the coins, unfortunately, I don't own. So I do have some pictures of those, but for the ones that I could provide actual coins for, that's why we did that. And I also wanted the audience to be able to participate with what they thought about the coin designs, if they thought they were real or was it an artist's rendition of what he thought Liberty would look like? And so that's what we're going to look at today. So we're going to start off with, let's see if I can get this to move forward. 1792 half Dismay. So this one we've got the image of because unfortunately I am not wealthy enough to own that one. So what do you think? Think this is was a model actually used for the rendition of this coin, or was it the artist's idealized version of Liberty? Okay, so we get a split jury. Anybody else have any ideas?
I think we don't know for sure.
Okay.
We've still got answers coming in online.
Okay.
Oh, that's everyone. We've got 60% saying real, 40% saying ideal.
Okay, so folklore says that Martha Washington sat for this coin. However, there are no images of Martha Washington that come remotely close to this picture that you see up here. And so it's believed that it was the creative interpretation of the artist versus the actual rendering of Martha Washington as, you know, her sitting there as the model. So the first half Disney was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. They had 3 presses to make these. And the first coin was struck on October 9th, 1792. And it's said to have been made from a plate that belonged to George Washington. So that's kind of a little anecdote there. All right. Next coin. Let's see. Libertas Americana medal. Same question. Is this a real model on the obverse? You think real? Anybody else? Okay, so the majority says ideal. You are correct. It is ideal.
Online, we had 29% saying real and 71% for ideal.
Okay. So this was designed by a French artist, and the medal was created during the time frame when there were a lot of allegories and like visual renditions of things. And so you can see that there's a baby Hercules there and Minerva with her spear. So it's much more allegorical image. And it was not an actual individual person, just somebody's idea of what liberty might look like. Okay, on this coin, we're gonna look at a 1893 Indian head cent, which we're gonna hold up an example of the coin in front of the camera here. Okay. And we're gonna hand this around so that people in the audience can actually look at what an Indian head cent looks like if you haven't seen one.
Yep.
All right, so the question on this is it real or ideal on this Indian head design? Somebody says ideal.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, oh. Online, we've got about 40% for real and about 60% for ideal.
okay. So there's a story that Longacre, who's the artist that created this design, which is really beautiful. It's a rendition of Liberty wearing what looks like an Indian war bonnet. And it was said that his daughter Sarah came to work one day when there was a delegation of Indians that were there. And she found the war bonnet that was sitting in his office and she put it on. That's the story, that the rendition came from him drawing a picture of her. However, if you talk to Longacre, he would say that the design was actually the face of this crouching Venus that was on loan from the Vatican. So he actually used that image to come up with the design for the Indian. So it's kind of or his rendition of Liberty, I should say. So that's the story on that. And that, you know, you kind of learn that story about the war bonnet thing, like as a, you know, that he actually used the image of his own daughter, but he would actually say that that's not the case. So anyway, later on, he did sketch his eldest daughter, and there were resemblances of her on various Liberty coins from the 1850s. And these tales were apparently, you know, talked about at the time that he was, that Snowden was writing to Treasury Secretary Howell Cobb, but he denied that the coin was based on any human feature. So we go with the crouching Venus as the image that was used. All right, we're going to look at a 1799 drape bust dollar. And the drape bust dollar design, actually that design was used on half dimes through dollars. And Robert Scott was the chief engraver of the mint at the time. And the question would be, was that a real woman used for that design? Or was it the artist's ideal?
I think it's real.
Okay.
It's got 57% real and 43% ideal online.
Okay. So the obverse design was actually a real person. And her name is Anne Willing Bingham. And she was a Philadelphia resident at the time. And actually, you know, the famous artist Gilbert Stuart did portraits of her. And so that was used as well to get the face of Liberty that we have on that $99. That's my favorite design of all of the coin designs, the drape bust design. And I particularly like the dimes. Okay, speaking of dimes, so there she is. Next one we're going to look at is a 1936 Mercury dime. So when you look at this 36 Mercury Mercury dime, you'll recognize the fact that it looks kind of like a Greek or Roman rendition of the messenger god Mercury. But the question would be, is this a actual person's portrait, or is it, you know, just the artist's ideal? Ideal?
Got about 30% real, about 70% ideal.
Okay. This was actually a real woman. Her name is Elsie Stevens. And there's actual proof that she was, it actually kind of looks like her, you gotta say, the Mercury dime with the bun and all that. And they kind of made it look like the cap. So they did a good job, I thought, of making her look allegorical and yet still be a person. So it's kind of cool. So there's actually correspondence between the artist, which was Wyman, and the Stevens family, indicating that she did sit for these, for the portrait that was used on this one. Okay. Next coin is going to be a Standing Liberty quarter. So as you take a look at her, you can look and see if you think that that is an image of a real person, or if you think that that was just the artist's rendition. We'll wait for the tally to come in. Does everybody get a chance to see the coins? Okay.
We've got 56% real and 44% ideal online.
Ooh, split.
Close.
Okay. So there's some controversy around this particular design about who was the actual model, not whether there was a model, but who it was. So there was a woman by the name of Doris Dozier, that there's an image of her. And supposedly she would later become a silent film actress under the name of Doris DeRay. And it was believed that she was actually the model for this coin for many years. And then she died in 1970 at the age of 88. But then in 1972, after the artist McNeil passed away, newspapers reported that the actual model was a Broadway actress by the name of Irene McDowell. And she was age 92 at that time, and she died the following year. And it's said that her name had been concealed as the model because her husband, one of McNeil's tennis partners, disapproved of the fact that it would be her. And in the article in the Numismatist, the author, Timothy Benford, suggested that the supposed deception was to fool McNeil's wife, who saw McDowell as a romantic rival. So that was the whole story behind that. Yeah, really, you know. So in 1982, Doris's husband kept saying that she really was the model that was used, not this Broadway actress McDowell. But anyway, so when McNeil presented his designs, he had two different designs that he submitted. That was kind of a scandal all in itself, with the scantily clad rendition of the type 1, bare-breasted Miss Liberty. And then but before that, before the design was changed and they put more chainmail on her and covered her up, there were a couple different designs. One was intended to send a message to the belligerent people during World War I that America wanted peace, but was prepared to fight if they had to. And the obverse that they accepted was a little bit less militaristic looking, where Liberty is facing to the viewer's right, which is the heraldic east, in the direction of the European war, and her shield faces in that direction as well. and she holds an olive branch as she strides through a gate and a wall, which is inscribed "In God We Trust." So that was the one that they ended up choosing. They said that they wanted her to look like Athena from the Parthenon. And even if you think back to like Columbia Pictures, they actually used that version of her, you know, like when you see the logo about the movie. So that got a lot of usage, that design. So that's the story of the Standing Liberty Porter. All right, we're gonna move along to a Walking Liberty half from 1938. How many think that that's a real person, or you'll have to see the coin as it comes around? So you can,
Mine is split exactly 50-50.
so we envision her striding, like, you know, like there's the big sun there and she's, okay. It's actually two models used for this. The first one is that Elsie Stevens, who was on the Mercury dime. And then the second one was considered the first, kind of like Miss USA. And her name, let me see if I can find her name, make sure I get it correct. So Elsie Stevens was the face, and supermodel Audrey Munson was the body. Come on, Audrey. There she is. So she was the one that ended up being that whole body visual. And there's all kinds of scandal around this poor lady. So in 1919, she was embroiled in a scandalous murder case that involved a crazed doctor who professed his love for her by killing his wife. This woman, Munson, was unfairly blamed for the crime. She then spent most of her adult life in and out of a mental institution and passed away in 1996 at the age of 104. By the time the coins bearing her image were taken out of circulation, she was completely forgotten and confined to an insane asylum and then buried in an unmarked grave. So the moral of the story is don't be a model on a coin. If you want to live to tell about it, right? Yeah, it's quite a story, isn't it? Okay. We're gonna go on to 1873 trade dollar. And while we're passing this coin around and looking at it, you can cast your vote about whether this is a real or ideal. And I'll just give a little background. This is one of William Barber's many different coin designs. And he was inspired by, I can't say what until you make your choice about whether it's real or ideal. Do we have our?
Mine is 27% real, 73% ideal.
Okay, so that's correct. It is ideal. It's inspired by the Liberty-seated dollar and by Britannia. So if you think of some of the British coins that have Britannia on it, and you kind of blend that together with the seated dollar, you end up with the trade dollar. So that was his inspiration for that. He created, designed many dies, patterns, commercial dollars, really high quality metals and tokens, private coins, and he even did the Amazonian silver set from 1872. So he's been highly involved in American numismatics and designing a lot of different designs. Okay, we're gonna move on to the Morgan dollar design. Everybody's probably pretty familiar with the Morgan dollar design, right? Everybody's seen them, probably handled them at some point. So George T. Morgan was in 1876, was creating a series of new coin designs at the behest of the director of the mint, who was Dr. Harry Linderman. And Morgan decided to use the profile of an American girl to depict the goddess Liberty instead of simply creating an imaginary figure. So how did our audience poll on that one? Did they-
Online had it 80% real,
Right.
20% ideal.
And here she is. Anna Williams. So the interesting thing about Anna Williams was when Morgan was trying to create the dollar, he couldn't find anybody that he thought really embodied the look that he wanted until he found this woman, Anna Williams. And his artist friend, Thomas Eakins, recommended her. And when he saw her, he's like, that's the person I want. She's the visual of what I want this design to look like. So at the urging of Eakins, she decides that she'll sit and model for this coin, but she didn't really want to. So after 5 modeling sessions, you know, she sits and he's doing his drawings and everything. She didn't really want people to know that it was her. And so she wanted it kept a secret, but unfortunately somebody blabbed, and then she ended up with all of this press and all this attention that she didn't want. So she pretty much wrote it off as an incident of her youth, you know, and just tried to make the people go away. She didn't want the attention. She didn't want to be the focus of all this attention that was on her, and somehow it just happened on its own with somebody saying too much. So she ended up getting thousands of letters and visits from people, both at her workplace and at home. So she just wasn't too happy about it. So she's probably still bemoaning the fact that she sat for that design. All right, we're going to look at a 1926 peace dollar. How many of you people have known any of these stories that I've been asking about? Some of them sound familiar. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so for the peace dollar, we'll find out if most people think she's real or ideal.
Very.
I think ideal. I think ideal, yeah.
Okay. And we actually have an audience member who knows the answer.
Online, we've got about 70% real, 30% ideal.
Okay, and our audience member is correct. This is a real person. Due to time constraints, DeFrancisi, who was the artist, was unable to schedule a professional model to pose for the obverse depiction of Liberty. So he opted to use his wife, which is exactly what you said. And what he did is he had her sit in front of an open window so that when the wind blew in, her hair would blow back. So that's how they got that look. And here she is. It kind of looks like a peace dollar, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So that's how they got that design. The sculptor later stated that though his wife was the model for the coin, it didn't depict a perfect likeness. And he states that Liberty is not a photograph of Mrs. DeFrancisi. It is composite face, and in that way typifies something of America. So he didn't want it to be like, you know, totally her, kind of like he trying to make it embodied all of the United States and what Liberty might look like in his mind's eye. All right. So this one's probably going to be pretty simple, but what about the Isabella quarter? That was kind of like it's a real person, but out of necessity, it had to be part of the artist's interpretation, right? That would have been 400 years ago if it had been, if it had been real. Okay,
Online is 93% real, 7% ideal.
well, it is kind of ideal though. I mean, even though that was the queen. It was not like she sat for that coin that was struck in 1892, right? Okay, that was one of those trick questions. Mean. All right. I wish I had an example of this coin, but I don't. And I can't show you the slide right yet because I'll give away the answer. So the next coin is a 1907 high relief. So can you picture what that looks like in your mind's eye? Is that real person or an ideal? It's actually a real person, which I was blown away. Like when I was doing this talk, I was like, nah, I can't be a real person. Not only was it a real person, she's African American, which I thought was kind of astonishing in 1907 that Augustus St. Gaudens would choose to use an American model for his design. I thought that was just so forward, progressive thinking and really kind of neat.
Online, 2/3 said real and 1/3 said
Really?
ideal.
Good
So
for them.
They had it.
Good job. Good job online. Yeah, so that's the story of her being the model for Augustus St. Gaudens. Let me see if we have any additional information. I think most people would agree that's probably one of the most beautiful designs that we have of US coinage. I can only imagine what our coins would have looked like if he had continued to live. If you look at the Indian design, it's just phenomenal. You look at the high relief, just so far ahead of his time, in his designs. And she was actually a model for, he was a sculptor, obviously, but there's a sculpture that he did that had her appearance as well. And it's the Victory of New York's Sherman Monument. So he used her a couple times for different artistic renderings. I thought that was the most interesting one of all, that's who was the model. All right, now we're gonna move forward to the more recent past. Susan B. Anthony Dollar. Na, na, na. Real or ideal?
Real.
Yeah.
100% real.
Yahoo. Okay. So there's all this controversy with Frank Aspero, who's the sculptor that designed this. And they went back and forth, because this was like an important thing where when the decision was made to create this coin, they wanted, this is the first time like a real American woman was on a coin. And he had 3 different designs. He had one when she was young, one when she was like in her 50s, and one when she was like in her 80s. And like, you can't use the 80s, like give the poor woman a break, right? So they ended up using the one when she was probably at the height of her influence. And so they used one that was closer to like when she was in her 50s, but because of her prominence in terms of, helping advance human dignity within our nation and everything, they just wanted to try to get it right. So there she is in all her glory. And the last one that I wanted to go over today was, everybody know what the Sacagawea dollar looks like? Yeah. So one of the most, oh yeah, first of all, do you think she's real or ideal?
Real.
What do we have?
Still stabilizing online. Give it a second. Okay, we've got 70% real, 30% ideal.
She's absolutely real. It was one of the thrills of my career to actually invite her to give a presentation for the young numismatists in Dalton, Georgia. I flew her in from Idaho, where she lives on a reservation. She's Shoshone Indian. Her Glenna Goodacre was looking for an American Indian to be the model for this design. So she walks into this not museum, but like a local Native American information center kind of thing. And it's down in New Mexico. And she walks up to the woman behind the counter, who happens to be an American Indian. And she said, "Oh, would you be the model for my coin design?" And she goes, "Well, you know, what coin are you doing?" "Oh, Sacagawea." She goes, "You can't use me. I'm like a middle-aged woman." She was 13 years old, Sacagawea, when she led the charge, you know? And she said, "But you could use one of my daughters." So she opens up her wallet and she's got 5 daughters with their pictures, right? And Glenna's like, "Oh, I want her." She's like, "Well, she's in college and you're not going to get her to sit down for a modeling session." She goes, "Well, what do you think it would take?" She goes, "Well, if you got her a rental car and promised her some, you know, like a hotel room and some fun time with her college friends, you could probably get her to do it, right?" So she does. So there's a group of different designs that are given. And they go into Walmart, buy a little baby doll, put it in the papoose that they had. They go to the museum and there's a doe skin dress, one that's similar to that. And they borrow it and it fits her perfectly. Like, it wasn't her dress. It was just one that was on display. So they put her in the dress, put the baby in the papoose, you know, a little Walmart baby, and they do the whole design, which you can see. And at the time, I think there was like 6 or 7 different designs. At seven were submitted by different artists. And so the girl's name that became the golden dollar, the face of the golden dollar, her name is Randyelle, RANDY'' Hito Teton. So she does her thing. She goes back to school and nobody knows what's going to happen, right? So fast forward, she gets the call, you know, all of a sudden you are now the face of the golden dollar. And her Glen Acres design gets chosen, and that's how she becomes the Sacagawea dollar. So it's just, she was just so great with the kids. She signed every last little thing, you know, that was in their goodie bag, and she just really took the time with them. And it's one of those stories that's kind of difficult, because when I got a chance to sit down and talk to her, she said that when she was in college and she signed this contract with the government and with the artist and everything, that it was her understanding that it was her face that was going to be used. Years later, she finds out that there's these bronze statues that have been made of her likeness being sold by the artist, and she has no idea. And so, like, she's completely exploited in these, you know, with these statues being sold of her image. And she said, when I signed this document, it was my understanding that it was my face that was going to be used, not my whole personage, you know? And so Randy, being Randy, says, you know, you could donate one of those statues to our tribe to put out in front of on our reservation as a, you know, just a gesture of goodwill, but it didn't occur. And one of the other things that was kind of sad about the whole thing was Glenna had promised her that dress, that if our design wins, I'll buy that dress for you. And the dress ended up getting sold to somebody else, so she never got the dress either. So it's kind of a sad story of just being a college kid and not knowing any better, I guess is the way you'd say it. But like I said, she was just wonderful with those kids and just really took the time. And it was just fascinating to get to know her story. So her tribe, they were the ones that would have been hunting buffalo. So they're like incredible horseback riders, hanging off the side of the horse and hunting buffalo. So she said that it was just interesting to talk to her because she said that her tribe still does that. Like they'll get together and have these races and stuff, and they're able to hunt on in Yellowstone. They're given a certain time frame that they can go and hunt buffalo, and it's just kind of a neat story. She was supposed to connect with member Munson, the one that was the Walking Liberty $50 model. She lived to be 104, right? She and Randy were supposed to meet up at an ANA, and they were going to have the only living female model on a coin, of a minority, with the oldest living woman who had been a model. And the woman actually passed away before the ANA could happen. So she really wanted to meet her, but it just didn't happen. But just kind of a cool story. Like that would have been neat to have both of them in the same room together. So anyway, that's my talk for today. Anybody have any questions about anything we went through?
Slide in beside you here. Alrighty, let me get the screen shared down. There we go. All right. Then we will take any questions. If you're online, just click the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, send them in. You should know this by now. We've been here for quite a few years. Otherwise, we'll start off in the room. Do we have any questions?
Is this published anywhere?
Question was, is this published anywhere, this talk?
No,
But you will.
I could. Good.
The recording of this will be on the NNP. Yes.
No?
In your research on Munson, do you know where she is in the grave? Do you know
No,
the cemetery,
that's a
anything
great
like that?
question. No, I didn't discover that, but that would be interesting to find out.
The question for those online was if you know where Munson's unmarked grave is from your research.
Do you know if Randy had any interest in numismatics before she modeled for this coin, or?
I don't believe she had any I don't even think she knew, anything about numismatics. It was just being completely thrown into the spotlight. I have some other pictures of her when she's actually like in Washington, DC, and they're, this is a big deal. The Mint's putting another minority other than, most people probably didn't realize in 1907 that it was an African-American woman that was on that high relief. So this is like a big deal to have like the minority woman on a coin, full dress. It was pretty neat. So I think she was just pretty much overwhelmed. Think of yourself at like 22 years old and like all of a sudden you're like some star. So yeah, it was a lot for her. Yeah.
Okay. We don't have anything online, so last call for anyone online. Otherwise, anything else in the room? Nope. Okay. Then that will probably wrap us up unless we have any last minute things pop in from online. Thank you all for attending. If anyone is interested in joining Women of Numismatics, if you're here in the room, talk to Melissa or Julia. We're sitting right there. And if you are online, you're welcome to contact them through the symposium website. If you just go to nnpsymposium.org, contact us, send in a form, and we'll happily forward your information along so you can get in touch with them. Otherwise, that's going to wrap us up for today. We will be back tomorrow starting bright and early at 9 a.m. Central. And if you are here in person and you would like to receive an email when the recordings of these talks are available, you're welcome to sign up for our email list. There's a piece of paper here at the front table. If you're online, you can do so through our website. That's it for me. See you all tomorrow.